Welcome to Riga. Welcome to StratCom. Welcome to StratCom Dialogue. It is the second conference that has been organized by the Center of Excellence in this format. The last one was just 2 years ago. And if you think in terms of history, 2 years is nothing. But if you think in the terms of the evolution of strategic communications today, it's been a whole age. 2 years, a new age has been developing in the way we communicate, in the way world communicates to us, in the way we are also attacked from the communication ways. It's not only, as it was the last time, about the military operations or faraway places. It has instead gone closer and closer to the heart of democracy, ultimately attacking the very essence of what it is, the election systems. We have struggled, we have built resilience, but there is still a long way ahead of us. Because when we see what is there around the corner technologically, we know it is going to increase with speed, with the diversity, with the targeting. Just thinking of big data, artificial intelligence, robotic networks. And this conference here today is meant to shed some light on what is, what has been, and what will be. And based on that knowledge, to be able to say what should be done. By us individually, as citizens, as experts, as professionals, by us as countries, and by us as an international community in different formats. And that is, I think, the kind of solutions that we are trying to find during the discussions and dialogues. And lastly, it is important that we have a dialogue. That's the purpose and the reason why we have called this a dialogue. Because by just saying what you are saying and not listening to others, you're not able to communicate. And that's, I think, the very old human skill we kind of start to forget in this new dynamic world, and that is dialogue. So I hope we'll have a very good dialogue for these 2 days. And to launch this conference, I'm very honored to ask first His Excellency President Raimonds Vejonis, who's been one of the initiators and the fathers of the idea of having this Center of Excellence in Riga, and very strong supporter of us, to give his introductory remarks. Please, Mr. President.
Madam President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to welcome you to the Riga StratCom Dialogue 2017. I am glad that the conference has brought together a remarkable spectrum of policymakers, communication experts, and academics. In the past 3 years, we have witnessed great geopolitical changes. To the east, we are facing the disinformation and propaganda activities by Russia. They aim to sway public opinion and influence decision-making across the transatlantic community. To the south, we have encountered an intensive Daesh information campaign to radicalize vulnerable groups, recruit new terrorist fighters, and plant fears in our minds. We have chosen not to engage in counter-propaganda. We have decided to safeguard the features that distinguish democratic communities from others. Together, we agreed to build the resilience, invest in media professionalism, to strengthen critical thinking in our societies, and to deconstruct lies. We chose the truth, and that is why we are here today. In only a few years, we have made significant progress. NATO's StratCom Center of Excellence in Riga is one of the best examples of our commitment to confront propaganda and disinformation from the south and from the east. The EU's East StratCom Task Force is an invaluable tool revealing Russian disinformation and strengthening the resilience of our partners. The Baltic Center for Media Excellence, established by journalists in 2015, strengthens independent quality journalism and media literacy in the Baltic states and the countries of the Eastern Partnership. The recently opened European Center of Excellence for the Countering Hybrid Threats in Helsinki is an example of EU and NATO cooperation. But there is still a lot to do and learn. I believe that one of our priorities should be deepened cooperation between NATO and the EU in strategic communication. This is especially important in the context of NATO's enhanced forward presence in the Baltic states and Poland. We have already been and we have already seen targeted disinformation campaigns aimed at the participating nations. These actions should not be allowed to hide behind the democratic freedoms of speech and of the press. Together with like-minded countries, we are working to adapt media regulation to the challenges of our age, both here in Latvia and at the EU level. These range from cross-border broadcasting and misusing the lack of coordination between member states to the lack of transparency of media ownership. Responsible, truthful, objective, and transparent media is a key feature of a democratic society. Ladies and gentlemen, I am confident that our efforts will prevail and outlive the era of post-truth and fake news. We have understood the threat, raised awareness, and most importantly, we are now working on the solution. I would like to thank the NATO StratCom Center of Excellence and the Latvian National Library for hosting this event. I wish you fruitful discussions and hope that they will serve as an opportunity to strengthen our ties, cooperation, and communication. I would like to conclude with the words of Buddha. There are three things that cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. Thank you.
The only thing that I have to add here is we all shall seek enlightenment to find the truth. In the area of information confrontation, one is not a soldier. It's always you have to have friends to be with you in a battle. And I'm very delighted that a very good friend of Latvia, Her Excellency Kersti Kaljulaid, has come and joined this conference. And this is a moment, very important moment, not only, I believe, for Estonia, but also for all three Baltic states, just starting the EU Council's presidency at a moment where so many things are moving, where so many crucial decisions had to be made, including on how Europe and how we within Europe confront the disinformation, the loss of trust, and the belief in the common European future. And I would also, before welcoming Her Excellency on the stage, comment on the few articles I've seen just at the beginning of EU presidency, Estonia being able once again present itself as a small yet cool nation in the north of Europe. With that, Your Excellency, please.
Thank you for all these warm words, President Vejonis, Excellencies, partners, allies, friends. Wonderful to be here in the room full of the fond memories of the Latvian EU Council presidency. It's an inspiration to speak here to you. Communication, it's everywhere. A dog wags a tail. A bird chirps a warning. A politician looks angrily at the child in the shopping mall, and somebody snaps a photo. We live in a world of meaning, stories, emotions, interpretations, fears and hopes, and all these nowadays are part of open and overt communication. Obviously, creating some direction in that chaos becomes more important. But going overboard and taking up propaganda measures would lead to limited freedoms. It is extremely important that we manage to deliver strategic communication without compromising with media freedom. What do we mean by strategic communication and why we need it? Strategic communication must satisfy an implicit constitutional obligation laid upon democratic governments to inform and explain, and therefore to communicate. Things need to be in balance. It is possible for governments to communicate too little or without sincerity, just as it is possible for them to communicate too much and be accused of manipulation and spin. When the desired point of balance is found, then governments learn that strategic communications can help to accentuate the positive as a vehicle with which to demonstrate competence and credibility. In pursuit of coherence and consistency, strategic communications can not only have a disciplining effect on national strategic thinking by requiring that strategy be clear and communicable, but also to ensure that what is communicated by government is strategically credible. Finally, strategic communications can assist in the pursuit of comprehensiveness and cooperation in government policy, if correctly conceived. They can improve national strategy as well as communicate it. Good communication is both a function and the proof of good governance. In a democracy, informative and transparent communication is essential to the maintenance of a productive and enduring relationship between the executive, the legislature, the judiciary, and the electorate. Communication, therefore, has a constitutional significance. The democratic process can be damaged when communication is insincere, inadequate, or incomplete. I hope this Riga StratCom dialogue can provide some answers to the pressing issues that bother universally all democratic governments. How do governments move beyond the traditional framework of target audiences, messaging, and products to understand and address the complex psychosocial structures and dynamics that lie at the root of our security problems? How do we cope with rapidly changing technological environment, an area of pervasive communication in which narrative, even if it is a simple sequencing of facts, can no longer be controlled or owned, and in which every event needs to be simultaneously discussed in both global and local environment? Oxford Dictionaries picked post-truth as its word of the year for 2016. We have seen divisive political campaigns in which popular frustration and anger took precedence over reason and facts. The word, Oxford said, captures the mood of the English-speaking public. Oxford defines the term as relating to or denoting circumstances in which objective facts are less influential in shaping public opinion than appeals to emotion and personal belief. To me, though, simply appealing for emotion and personal belief is not a big problem. All political communication does that. Rather, a much bigger problem is creating high emotions based on facts which could be easily wrong-footed. A decade ago, it would have been impossible to say we have had enough of experts and base an emotional campaign on simply unfounded data or wrong facts. Even clearly refutable promises were a no-go. Language is not just about communication. It is the vehicle of ideas. And no communication strategy can save an unconvincing and ineffective policy. What we do need always is the leader's intent. And this intent needs to carry from election campaign to the process of governing. If the link from promise to practice is simply not possible, as it by definition will be with post-truth campaign wins, it must lead and ultimately will lead to governing failure. No communication strategy can save an unconvincing and ineffective policy. We must have actual policy results in the fields of social, economic, cultural, and foreign and security policy. Post-truth for politicians will always be a short-termist strategy. To counter post-truth politics, we need better political leadership. We need leaders to take a stand, even if it threatens their re-election. Citizens await decisive responses to crisis. When traditional parties do not provide them, they look for those whose rhetoric sounds decisive, yet carries within this decisiveness of reaction a simple, illiberal solution. The EU was created to lead Europe for forever. What we have seen in some countries has been exactly this: lack of leadership, cruelly exposed at the moment when post-truth campaign ends. It has amplified the feelings of insecurity, and while the democracies facing this in the most exemplary way are sure to stand the test and will sooner or later come back to the reasonable center ground, a weaker, yet less deep democracy, a younger democracy, might risk to collapse. Because if post-truth promises cannot be fulfilled, people might look for even less democratic options and one strong man to make decisions. It sounds simple. We know it would be wrong. But going through a cycle of finding out would be painful and costly. We have also seen a strategic decision of not running to extremes and simple propositions, standing on the center ground and developing the common sense, showing the promise of rational politics. We have seen that one can win with honesty and realism. But this, of course, also takes skillful strategic communication. The advantage is that words can then be transferred into convincing policy making, which was not the case for post-truth campaign making. The same, incidentally, applies to the communication about our European Union. One country found out that non-convincing messaging about the Union can actually lead to talking yourself out of the Union. Long have politicians thought that blaming Brussels is a cheap and convenient fig leaf to the deficiencies of your own governance. And it appears that this is not the case at all. And we now see the rhetoric adjusting all over the Europe, no risks being taken anymore by mainstream parties. It will work. I know why it will work, because honestly always does. We have in Estonia had 25 years of successive governments, whichever color, talking honestly about our union. And we are one of the most Euro-optimist countries. And it is not structural funds or cap. Other countries have similar levels of financial support. It must be the clear messaging about the fact that the EU is the best option for security and development. What does changed communicational environment mean to the relations between government and media? Responding to blatant lies and rebutting false charges is important, but it is not enough. Hostile influence operations will fail when publics understand them for what they are. Best response of democratic governments is and always will be to defend the ability of accurate information to circulate freely. The challenge is, however, how to do it in the same time frame as disinformation spreads. New information landscape demands governments and security institutions to be more open. Hacks and leaks force us to comment about issues that were once considered sensitive and never commented upon. One example of that trend is public reports of the intelligence services. Governments in our region must be better in explaining our foreign and security policy choices, as well as concerns to our own public, but also to the wider international audience, to our friends and allies. It is very important to support media diversity, think tank landscape, and encourage cooperation between think tanks, governments, and media. It is important not to respond to propaganda with counter-propaganda. It is equally important to teach people the merits of honest and open discussion and actually talk to people to explain why exactly anti-propaganda is as limiting as propaganda. A good working relationship does not mean that media writes what government says, but it does mean that journalists receive regular in-depth off-the-record briefings and that these briefings actually add up to their knowledge and are not a mere talking points presentations. But this, of course, means that off-the-record briefings should remain off the record. It means that journalists have contacts to rely on for quick info checks, to do the fast fact check or verify the source of information. In Estonia, security institutions have, in the last years, opened up. We have Internal Security Services Annual Report, very popular document. Foreign Intelligence Agency's Public Risk Assessment, as popular, as well read. Defense Forces Annual Overview of Activities, and the Information System Authority also does annual reports on cybersecurity and developments. I would like more people to read that document as well. Importance of this approach is that it provides ex-ante reliable information from trusted source. It increases public awareness, enriches debate in expert communities, and offers security and defense officials the arena for participating in the public debate. Let me now turn to specifically the social media and democracy. The internet and media companies challenge the traditional media's function as gatekeepers and agenda setters. It is not only the media which has to adapt, but also governments are feeling these challenges. Key question is how to get our message through while adapting to these platforms and meeting the public expectation. We all know that the era of press releases is over, and my great inspiration, Madeleine Albright, has said that these days people are talking to their governments using 21st century technology, while governments listen on 20th century technology and respond with 19th century policies. The lady's 80 and more. The governments must scale their online communications to meet the needs and expectations of their constituents. But the social media platforms, in turn, they must also restore the integrity of information. Facebook is changing democracy. It simply is. It's a fact of life. 65% of people in the United States read their news from the Facebook. Targeting specific voters is more effective and cheaper than speaking to the public on TV. And targeting gets more precise. Ads appear in the user's feed, amid media news and updates from friends. Many users don't ever realize that an ad is an ad. By now, too, Facebook knows everything about its users, and it feeds people with information they would like to see. And that, in turn, creates the mass feelings best expressed by ages-old saying, everybody thinks this way. They do not. It's just the algorithm which has decided to show you those thoughts that match your own. It narrows everybody's vision, relying on Facebook for their news. But I am glad to note that at least Facebook has already taken some steps in distinguishing lies from the truth by letting their users report posts as fake news stories. Fake news is a subset of the problem, and on social networks, lying is rarely punished. You don't have to source your claims. Indeed, many voters probably trust homemade, unbranded content more than mainstream media. And you can hire fake commenters to chatter about your post, thereby extending its life and spread. Looking at the debate, some sort of regulation, code of conduct at least, seems inevitable. Mainly there are questions of user anonymity online, allowing for illegal behavior online, because everything which is illegal in real life is similarly illegal online. Question is, who does it? On the internet, no one knows you're a dog. You remember that caricature. As my friend and the journalist Estonian first e-resident Edward Lucas says, anonymity has its uses, but civilization depends on trustful interaction between people who do not know each other really well. Authentication using, for example, real-world data such as the credit card reference, making two-step authentication compulsory, using a secure solution such as Smart ID, and above all, governments have had the monopoly of safe identification, people to people, people to business, by providing passports. What is the problem in cybersphere is that today, Estonia is almost alone among governments that guarantees an electronic compulsory ID, which is available together with a large number of various trusted services, and which is comprehensively used by its citizens. Some others have the ID system, but not so comprehensively used. The other offers for time-stamped identification, they are there, but they come from multinational companies. Do we really want the governments to cede that governmental responsibility? I do not think we have the right. For making street space safe and secure, governments leave their visible footprints on them. The same has to be true for the cyberspace. These are the thoughts I wanted to share with you, and I hope some of these thought lines will find their way into your forums and discussions. I've read the program of this conference, and it's ambitious. I will definitely try to get the memos of all the panels awaiting you, and I wish you all a really good conference which would help us to navigate through the next 2 years until the hopefully next conference, because any knowledge we have today will be outdated in 2 years' time, we know that.